You guys as excited as I am?
Yeah.
We go in, right?
Let's get the party started.
We can go in, yes.
Been in here a while, waiting.
I'm sorry, it's my fault for overtime. That's my
Not
bad.
your fault.
Well, it
That
is.
wasn't you.
I kept the officers longer than I intended.
Give them extra homework, huh?
Gold stars for all of them.
Yeah,
Awesome.
right. A big whip. I guess it would be a ruler in your situation. Don't seem shame.
Dazzle a little bit.
Right.
How did we multiply the 3 priests? It's crazy.
Right?
They saw how OP Savvy was. And they were all,
I want to be just like him.
Well, it may be
Just
something
like
to do with
Daddy.
luck as well, because there's something about priests where they're just the the mounts drop. So I don't know.
what we talking about? I swooped in at the last minute and got one.
Oh, that's right. Good
I
job,
think
Ian.
you were sandwiched between a couple of priests.
That's what it was. The luck rubbed off on you. So
The salt was real. This
Right.
guy showed up 2.5 hours.
so
I think he prefers to be between 2 priests.
Ooh. We all know the safe word's cantaloupe.
oh, Annie. All right. Well, as I mentioned on Facebook and on Discord, so since we're starting a new rating tier, if you want to change up your main, now's the time to do it. We do ask you, though, to stay on that tune for the duration of this raid tier. So that way it's easier to strengthen and gear up our raid team if we're all logging on with the same tune. So, but like I said, now's the time if you want to make that change.
I heard that this is tough on melee. Probably scale up.
Right. Yeah. So. And as always, guys, make sure that we're coming prepared. So make sure your gear is enchanted and gemmed, and make sure you have updated add-ons and you got your pots and your rerolls and all that good stuff. To start off, we're going to need about 15K. If we end up running into trouble, well, then we'll have to revisit the minimums. But I think 15K is the magic number. I think we can do it.
Okay, on this box, don't cleave.
Right? Yeah, we don't want to kill our friends.
Oh, please.
Any questions about the loot rules? Just want to quickly throw it out there.
Thanks, guys.
That wasn't nice.
Mic control.
We killed the cow.
First, did you see my message?
I'm sorry. That's great. You're gonna play with the speaker.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
you'll basically be healing just me and the tanks.
Right. I understand.
Did you mess with your mic packet?
Got a new headset.
Yeah, you sound all
Delicious.
sexy. Like sexier, I mean. Like you always sounded sexy, but sexier.
Get it, girl.
Start a cat fight.
Sound like you have meatballs in your mouth.
Only in your dreams.
Only if they're yours, Oopsie.
Oh
boy.
dear.
Aim to please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me explain this fight. I know that some of you are already familiar with this fight, so I apologize. Bear with us. This is the first time we've been in here, so I just need to quickly go over the mechanics. I'll give you a Cole's Notes version, and if there's any pro tips after, then we would certainly appreciate that. So Packet has agreed to play with this guy. Let me mark him. Okay. So Packet's going to take care of the speaker. We'll call him speaker because it's just easier to do so.
On that spaghetti face for Zach's.
Spaghetti, sure.
Why not snow noodles?
Sure. This is going to go great. I can feel it. Okay, so Packet already knows this, but he's going to be 30 yards away from this guy, and Packet also needs to be about 5 yards away from everyone else. I'm going to mark him with, let's say, I'm going to mark him with the star, so that way it's easy to find him. So we need to be 5 yards away from Packet.
So stand on top of Packet.
Stand on top of Packet, that's right. Okay. So the noodle guy, he does a few abilities we have to worry about. One, he's going to do the Shadow Blast. Make sure to avoid it. He's also going to do a cone attack. Make sure you avoid that too. Otherwise, you're going to become hostile, and we don't want that. He's also going to apply a Dark Herald on someone, and that person is going to be able to buff other players with the promise of power. And so what's going to happen is if you get buffed, you can increase your damage by 10%, but it'll be at the expense of reducing your health by 10%. So it's kind of a buff debuff. It does need to be dispelled. There's personal responsibility here. So when your health, you know, when it starts to affect you and it starts to become too much, you need to call out for a dispel. So I'll leave that on you guys. When you need the dispel, call it out. Like, it's great that we get the DPS buff, but you know, not at the expense of if we're gonna die and it's too much to, you know,
First.
Mhm.
That's the one where it sort of puts like a white ring around you. Step up.
I believe it's a purplish ring around you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So as far as that debuff goes, there's certain abilities the boss does that it needs to be dispelled before it goes off. So it's more of a healing thing as far as when to dispel. Like he does like a certain thing at certain percentages, so just something to keep in mind. And to be honest, like the buff is like a double-edged sword.
Right.
It's almost worthwhile not to have it because the chance of people dying because of it is almost worse than having the damage buff. Because if you lose DPS, you're sinking into a hole and fairly quickly. So, you know, like in my personal opinion, it's almost not worth getting the buff. We went through many times, and it seemed like everybody who got the buff usually ended up dying. Whether it just be because the boss did something and you know the spell didn't go out quick enough, or we didn't realize that something was going to happen and didn't ask for it to spell, etc. So, I mean, yeah, it's nice, but as this whole place is everything that nice comes with a price.
Mhm.
So just keep that in mind, you know.
Yeah.
And if you are going to get that buff, I would suggest all those players stay together. So, priests throw out the AoE the spell.
And we have 3 priests, which is great.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the event that we need to do that, great. Now, for heroic, it's a bit of a different story. You know, there's even a greater cost. But, you know, for now, if you get the buff, just be mindful that you have it and call out for a dispel. Because it's not worth you dying, because dying is no DPS. All right, for the other guy, so the feared, I've marked him with a skull. So tanks, you guys are going to want a tank swap at 3 stacks of sheer mind. For everybody else, he does a void crash ability. Basically, there's these, like, it's just kind of a void ball that's going to crash on the ground and it's going to bounce 3 times. So the first 2 times, huge amount of damage. You want to make sure that you're not in that purple circle when it bounces. But the 3rd time it bounces, it's just going to be a small circle, a small purple circle. We have to make sure that we absorb those. We need to soak those. But for the first 2 times, when it's a big and then a medium-sized circle, you want to avoid those. He's also going to do Crashing Doubt, which is a debuff that's going to be placed on you. It's also going to slow you down. When it expires, it does AoE damage. So you need to get out of the raid. But be aware, you're going to be slowed down, so make sure that you allow time to get yourself out of the raid before it expires. Now, any questions so far?
With that one, especially if you're melee, as soon as you get that debuff, run out as far as you can.
Yeah.
Because of that slow.
Right.
You want a demonic gateway out?
That helps. That would be great, for sure.
do not run into the water. The water is as good as 74 meters.
This is true.
Watch the timer on that debuff. You do not want to get out right away. You want to give yourself time to pop a speed cooldown and get out of the raid. 30 to 40 yards is about the max damage fall off. But if you leave too soon, you're outranging your healers and you're ending up just killing yourself because that dot does hurt.
For sure. And Oopsie is also right. When we start the fight, we have to stay on this island, on this platform. If you go into the water, you're dead. So just make sure you stay on the island. All right, the other thing we need to know about are these 3 relics. So we're going to start on the blue square. So that means Annie and Dozer, you're going to be on the blue square. And like I said, you're going to be tank swapping on 3 stacks of Seer Mind. So what happens is that these bosses, when they get to 75, 50, and 25%, they're going to activate the relic that they're closest to. So if we start them on the blue square, they're going to activate that crown. And what the crown does is it's raid-wide damage. Anyone who's less than 25%, it's an insta-kill. So healers, we need to be aware of that. We need to have some healing cooldowns. So I can go first with the healing cooldown, then let's have Pro, and then have Inway, and then Schnoz. Does that sound okay? So myself, Pro, Inway, Schnoz. Okay. So once the feared guy, once he gets down to 75%, you want to make sure tanks, he's right on the crown. He's going to activate the crown, and then major raid-wide damage, we got to keep everybody up. And then Buddy on the X, so Packet knows what to do with him. When he gets to 75%, he's going to kite that guy over to the blue square where the crown is, and then he's going to activate the crown. And then we're going to move in a clockwise direction. So once the crown's been activated, then we're going to move over to the panties, and then we're going to activate the trident when he gets to 50%. And the trident is the big bubble. And I know that we've all done LFR. So you get into the big bubble, everyone needs to be in the big bubble. You need to like unleash as much damage as you can, because any damage or any of the shield that's left over, that's going to reflect back on us. And so we want to make sure that we can do as much damage as we can when we're in the bubble. Once we do that, once both bosses have activated that relic, then we'll go over to the Void Stone, which is on the purple diamond. And that relic will make us immune to healing, and the boss is going to have an absorb shield on him. And once we down the absorb shield, then it will break the healing immunity that we have on us. Any questions about kind of the movement of the fight?
I believe for the bubble key is that tanks have to get the boxes into the bubble.
That is true. Well, that's really frustrating, especially for the range tank, like for Packet. It's frustrating to try. Well,
the speaker will be staying with the fear the entire time. Once I get initial aggro, nobody should be stealing aggro from me unless a tank taunts me off of me.
Right.
I will be having that boss with the other one the entire fight for cleave.
Can I do that
Packets.
in Packet?
Packet's being humble. It is a pretty tough job. He just knows what he needs to do.
And when the trident goes out, everybody needs to stand in it.
That's right. Okay.
It doesn't move, it just stays right where it's at.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. And the last thing that we need to worry about, there's some ads that will also spawn throughout the fight. There's going to be these visage ads. They're going to spawn and despawn on their own. They're going to cast Terrifying Echo, which is a raid-wide fear, and the only way we can prevent them from doing that is by DPSing them down to 1 HP. That'll stop their cast. Then they're going to heal back up again. And then when they're about to cast Terrifying Echo, we got to bring them back down to 1 health. And then they'll just despawn. So that's the only way that we can manage that Terrifying Echo mechanic. The other ad, we're going to have 3 abominations that are going to spawn. They're going to cast a spell called Witness the End. It's huge raid-wide damage. We want to stagger the interrupts for these guys. So there's going to be 3 of them, and so it'll be easy to figure out who's in the middle. So I want the middle ad of those 3 I want that middle ad to get his spell off. So when he gets his spell off, he dies. So that's, you know, that's kind of the silver lining. So we take raid-wide damage, he gets his spell off, but it kills him. So the middle ad, we want him to cast his spell. The one to the left and to the right, we want to interrupt. And then once the middle one is dead, the one on the left and to the right, we only have 2 now to manage and try to time our interrupts and determine when we want that spell to go off depending on the health of the raid. Does that make sense?
No.
So when those 3 ads spawn, those 3 abominations, they're gonna spawn in a line. There's gonna be 3 of them. 1 in the left, 1 in the middle, and then 1 in the right. And they're all going to be trying to cast Witness the End. The one on the left and the one on the right, we want to be interrupting. We don't want them to get their cast off because it's gonna be raid-wide damage and it's gonna hurt. We only want one of them to get their cast off. So the one in the middle we'll leave alone. When he gets his cast off, we'll take raid-wide damage and then he dies. Yes?
Crap.
Oh,
Yes?
Ready. Exclude. Run.
3, 2, 1.
Run away.
I was just gonna say, like there's usually one that is like the furthest away. I believe DBM should mark them at different color combinations or whatever markers. So it's easier to just set it up to where like a certain marker is left alone all the time, and then there's another marker that is the one to interrupt. Like, because there's 2 interrupts, and then there's 1 interrupt, and then assigning people to interrupt those also is very helpful because there's literally only 3 interrupts, so
Right.
more than enough interrupts. But I can't remember exactly what the markers are, but I think it's like noon, diamond, and something else, and nickel. But anyway, once we figure out what they are, then just assign people to those, and then either let the one that's furthest out go off first because that's the hardest one to get to because somebody usually has to run out and interrupt it, and then whatever one you want it's kind of set up in a triangle. That's why I was confused when you said middle. I didn't understand. But yeah, just setting people up to do the certain markers that they're marked with is pretty efficient. And then you can have you can have 2 people set to interrupt the same one if you want to, just to make sure that it doesn't interrupt it. Because if you have multiple go off, I don't know how much I don't know if they've done that at all, but if 2 goes off, 2 to 3 go off at the same time, it's bad.
Right. So are you saying they spawn always in the same location?
No, they don't spawn in the same location, but they kind of spawn in like a triangle shape. Usually there's one that's far out and there's 2 that are closer to the raid group. And so usually you let the one furthest away get off first. And then then the 2 in the front are interrupted both at the same time in the front. And then you interrupt one of those when they start casting again, and then the other one will go off, and then that's it. That's all you got to do. And the other one will go off whenever he casts.
Well, the one that's farthest out, like when you say the triangle formation, that's the one in the middle. So that's the one that we'll let go off anyway. So it's the 2 that are closest to us, the ones that are left and right, that we need to interrupt. Am I right?
Okay. So the furthest one out is what you're calling the middle.
Is the middle, yeah.
But you said middle, and I was confused because I don't know, they kind of spawn wherever they want to, but there's usually always one furthest out. So I was just trying to clear that.
Gotcha. It's all good. Hey, it's all good.
Have to use that one rated in 6 months.
All right, Corpse, is that you volunteering to interrupt one of them?
No, I was answering did everyone get the last?
I didn't know it was out.
In all honesty, it should only be ranged players interrupting.
I just don't drop another one if everybody else got knocked out.
Well, we've got hunters. We've got Ashamis. They have wind shear. So we should have enough range to be able to do the job.
I think you need at least 5.
We got Shadow Priest with interrupts too.
Okay.
And some boomkin.
Right.
Yeah, we had more than enough interrupt. Ended up like assigning 2 people for the same target, just because if they died or if the other person forgot, no matter what, it would be interrupted. Because usually they spawn like in unopportune times when everything else is going on, so having a backup is not a bad idea.
Okay. Well, sorry, go ahead.
It's just one of those mechanics where it's super simple to do, but you know, when things start happening, people forget what they're doing or they don't see the ad spawn or whatever. So having 2 people assigned to the same target ensures that they don't get off, because it's kind of a raid wipe scenario.
Right. Okay, well, how about let's just do a YOLO attempt just so we can see the fight, and then for the second attempt, we'll assign interrupts.
First get beacons out, pop on.
What was that packet?
Put your beacons on, people. Hop on.
Okay. I'll give you my
Oh, was there did we get another feast or did just eat our own food?
Oh, here, let me put one down. Feast is down.
Love that shield it does.
Thank you.
Also, before we start, I just wanted to say, like, on this fight, like, a lot of the mechanics on this fight are in the second boss. As we know, Blizzard likes to put in, like, little cues and stuff, and even trash packs, etc. So just make sure you're paying attention to the mechanics on this fight, and it does make the next fight a lot easier if you get the mechanics right on this fight, if that makes sense.
It does. All right, let's give it a go.
Yeah, mark the boxes again.
And can we also get a marker on Packet, just so everybody stays away from him, and some tank markers?
Oh my God.
If there's any markers left over, put one on me, because I have trinkets. People kind of stack towards me if they have there.
Okay, on the tanks, let's give it a go.
First, go ahead and move over to the right a little bit, where I dropped you off. I'll be running behind you.
Great pot.
Embrace the master's truth. Down before his might.
All DPS on the field, guys.
3, 1.
3, 2, 1.
Stay away from me.
Okay, avoid those big circles. We only want to soak them when they're small little purple circles.
Get out of there.
Nixus, you do not want to be near me.
Run out if you got the doubt.
AoE damage from two.
Yep, get ready for big AoE damage. Everyone needs to be above 25% health. I have first cooldown.
Switch to
Interrupts. I got triangle.
2, 1.
Watch out. Cerebral.
Okay, everybody should be on the other guy. Remember, call out if you need a dispel. Okay, get ready for grade wide damage. Second cooldown.
We need to move the big guy over to the next one.
Yep, we'll head over there.
Just call down. Diamond.
Pennies.
Okay, we're gonna head over to the trident. Soak the little ones, guys.
Also, if you have damage buff, do not be soaking anything, or else you'll get.
Are we supposed to burn that visage? It's
Range
still
DPS should be staying on it until it's about 26 energy. Don't let it get full health before then.
Okay, we're gonna activate the bubble soon.
Start stacking up.
You're good to be off of it now.
Okay, stack up, guys. Hey! Everybody in the bubble?
What?
Oh, sorry.
Make sure you're getting interrupts.
Moon.
Well, come here, Hershey.
Everybody should be on the speaker. Okay, bubble soon. Avoid those. Everybody in the bubble? Okay, let's head over to the Void Stone.
Dispel Sammy, please.
I'm not sure if we discussed this, but this guy's that we have to DPS off.
Hunters, you can't be over here. Just move towards the middle.
At 25%, we're all going to be immune to healing, but there's going to be a shield.
Visage is almost back to full health.
He's good. You're good. Once he's below 20% energy, he won't get the cast off before.
Oh, he
Nice.
just okay. All right.
Okay, we're going to have to DPS the shield. That'll drop our immunity.
Interrupt diamond. Interrupt diamond only. Interrupt moon.
guys. Okay, it's going to happen again. DPS the shield, then it'll drop the healing immunity. Hi.
Hi.
Have you?
I like your wine glass of strawberries. Drinking strawberries?
No, there was wine in it,
See,
but
that's what I thought.
it's gone.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, is she put wine with strawberries or she's not a cup of strawberries?
Go ahead and lust, eh?
Yes, please.
I go back tomorrow.
You do?
Yep. Hopefully not on them.
Yeah.
I gotta start with it.
We have to make sure to take them down to 1% at the same time.
Yeah, they need to die at the same time.
Within 10 seconds.
Otherwise, they'll start healing.
Switch to Zax.
Yes, please.
Upper assault. Switch back to platoon.
We are the most awesome raid team ever. We just one-shotted this boss. Nice.
Very nice.
Well done.
Very smooth.
I'd clap, but I'm a
Oh, I like it
I
like
know.
clapping for
You're actually
ourselves.
being filmed,
Yeah.
by the way. Just so you
Yeah.
know.
Am I on your channel?
You are.
Hi.
Yeah.
Now I can see myself when I watch your video.
This is my son, everybody.
Yeah. I'm the cripple.
Oh, you're so awesome.
Now we
What,
do
me?
first